Hey everybody, my name's Russell Elleven. I'm a Unitarian minister, just like Theodore Parker, who was just mentioned. The arc of the moral universe is long. I'm going to talk to you about using drugs religiously. How do you like them apples? Let me tell you first who I am, because it does present a frame of reference where I see this issue. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. If you don't know what UUs are, we are a, some would say progressive, some would say liberal religious movement. We have within our congregations people who are deists, who believe there is a God. We have people who are non-theists, who do not believe there is a God. We have some folks who believe Jesus was a great teacher, but not necessarily divine. We have witches. We have Buddhists. Basically, I'm guaranteed to piss somebody off in the pulpit every week. There's something I'm going to say. But I will say that in 1970, the Unitarian Universalist Association called for the legalization of marijuana in 1970. In 2002, we urged for the war on drugs to end. I'm also a licensed therapist, and I'm a SMART recovery facilitator. SMART is self-management and recovery training. It is a non-theistic way for people to use cognitive behavioral therapy to change addictive behaviors. And I was trained in SMART to help people who were either going into prison or who were coming out of prison. And all of them had one thing in common, and that was drugs. But a second thing that many of them had in common was that they were people of color. I will also tell you that I'm not an expert. I've studied a lot of religions. My master's degree is in world religions. But I wouldn't claim to be an expert in these. I'm going to tell you things that I believe is accurate, that I have read. So why would somebody like me, a minister, a therapist, talk about stuff like this? And you all know who Rick Steves is here, right? Rick Steves. He said that once he began talking about cannabis reform, marijuana reform, that people just began to give him pot. Everywhere he goes, people give him pot. So I'm talking out today. I want to see how that goes. Why might someone use drugs religiously? Here's a little cartoon I found from the New Yorker in 1961 by Warren Miller. And it says, hey, what is this stuff? It makes everything I think seem profound. So they're drinking something, they maybe have smoked something, but things seem more profound. So you can just imagine that shamans, medicine men, and most of the time they were men, medicine men, but there are examples of medicine women as well, and early priests were herbalists. They knew what different plants were. They knew what properties they had. They knew what could do this and what could do that. And so people would come to these shamans for help. Entheogenic is anything that can be used to attain these other states. So en means in, theo is sort of like God, gen, the beginning or from out of. So Genesis, out of, or in the beginning, entheogenic substances. And when they found certain substances would give visions, these shamans most of the time kept that stuff for themselves. Because they could see things, they could predict things. There are some folks who used medicines for vision quests, but most of the time the shamans would often keep it for themselves. And sometimes it was used for war, so that there was a different sort of bravery, less fear perhaps, and less pain when things didn't go so well. One of the first things that I have found in the literature comes out of the Hindu tradition, a thing called soma. And we don't really know what it was. The Rig Veda, the early Hindu scriptures from about 5,500 years ago, explains it. It talks about some of the vision kinds of properties that there were. And they talk about Soma being a god, equal to a god like Shiva and some of the other major Hindu gods. It was revered that strongly. Hindus today, you can still see people like this dude lighten up. This is a wandering ascetic, sadhu. Being a wandering ascetic is a hard life. When you see these fellas, they're very thin. They don't eat much. They don't drink much. What they try to do is meditate and transcend and connect with the divine, and they do that with bang, which is cannabis that's mixed together. Sometimes they will drink it with tea. Oftentimes they will light up like this fella in the City of Lights, Benares, with high festivals. You will often see these men using cannabis, and they do it as an offering to Shiva, one of the major gods. It does boost their meditation and transcendental states. Now, what about the Bible? And what about Jesus? Was Jesus a toker? I thought that would get a bigger laugh than it did. But my personal opinion, what do you want the Bible to say? My opinion is that you can use the Bible to say just about anything. We have used the Bible for some really abhorrent things in the past. We have used the Bible in a lot of different ways. What do you want the Bible to say? You can find things in there. Christ is the Greek word for Messiah, which is a Hebrew word for the anointed one. And what we have found is that some oils for anointing appear to have contained an infusion of cannabis. It's quite possible. And when they anointed people, I grew up Episcopalian, and with the divine rite of unction, there was just a little bit of oil put on a cross on my forehead when I got sick. That is not how we believe that anointing took place. In some older movies, you will even see like it appears to be quarts and gallons poured onto somebody who is being anointed. And our skin is the largest organ of our body. So there could be some infusion there. I will also just bring up the fact that wine, as you may know or have read about, is an intoxicant. The first miracle that Jesus performed was turning water into wine. And Jesus, in the book of Matthew and Luke, was accused to be a drunkard. And you do not get a reputation like that if it just happens one time. People see this again and again. Doesn't mean that it was true, but it does mean that it was something that Jesus had to deal with. And at the Last Supper, he did serve wine. And there appears to have been, in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, he tells them to stop getting drunk at the Lord's table. So there's another way that intoxicants have been used religiously. Pacific Islanders, these folks are from Fiji. They have a drink called Kava. I've gone to a Kava bar in Maui and taken some Kava. What it really just seemed to do to me was numb my lips. I only drank 1 cup. It tastes like mud, but it does have an aesthetic, a sedative and anesthetic property. So I did only have 1 cup. You can take more than that. There are stories of elders in the Hawaiian tradition who have imbibed so much kava over the course of their career as holy men that their face is really craggled up and bumpy, and so they can get too much of it. But what they use this to is to make the stories flow. Talk story is a big thing in Pacific Islanders' heritage. And they will also use it as a peace offering between 2 different clans who are fighting. When they have come to resolve their issues, they will use kava as a way to say, we're going back. You may have heard of Rastafarians. There's Haile Selassie there. His Rastafari was, Ross is a title, like Duke, head. Tafari was his first name before he took his Haile Selassie name as emperor of Ethiopia. Many believed Haile Selassie to be the second coming of Christ, of Jesus, within the Rasta group. It's interesting to note that Haile Selassie never confirmed nor denied that. Rita Marley, Bob Marley's wife, said that when Haile Selassie came to Jamaica, that as his car passed by and he was waving, that she could see the stigmata, the nail hole through his hand, as a sign to her that he was indeed the second coming of Jesus. Rastas will also eat in a way called ital, or it is a take from the word vital. They do not eat things that are canned or processed. They eat raw as best they can, and they use the herb as a sacrament. Now, Rastas, in my opinion, and from what I've read in many Rastas' opinion, is not a religion so much as it is a way of life. So there are no real congregations or meeting houses where you go. You get together and use the herb to reason together. In some ways, it is similar to the talk story of the Pacific Islanders. And maybe there is something about islands that get that flowing together. There's also the Native American church who uses drugs religiously, peyote. They commune with the spirit world. I have a professor who took peyote. He said they had the bucket next to him because almost everyone who tries it the first time gets sick. So he tried peyote, the drum beats came alive, and he regurgitated. They are peyoteros who are licensed in the state of Texas. There are only 3, as best I can tell, who can pick. They will not dig up the cactus. They will only chop at it so that it will continue to grow and get larger each time. And with Native American religious traditions, you can never say what all of Native Americans believe. The clans and tribes are so different. Some believe that peyote, like Soma, is a god. Some believe peyote helps them reach Jesus more easily. So there's a wide variety of beliefs there. You probably know there have been a couple of congregational attempts to use pot as a sacrament. Temple 420, you may have heard of him, Craig X. His last name was Rubin. He sort of combined Judaism and Christianity. And there was also the THC ministry by Roger Christie that started out of Hawaii. Both of these have something in common as far as I can tell, and that is that law enforcement didn't like it. Both of these men got in trouble with the law. Roger is still in jail awaiting for trial. What I believe might work is a congregation that uses marijuana legalization as a mission, not necessarily as a as a sacrament. I think if you get together to smoke pot under religious aegis, I think that is a flag for the government to come and do something awful. I didn't know where to put this, but there's this thing called the Marsh Chapel experiment. It took place under the direction of Timothy Leary, if any of you remember him. He was at Harvard still at the time, Harvard Divinity School student, recruited some other Divinity School students from around the Boston area and gave them psilocybin magic mushrooms on Good Friday before the service was to take place. Half of them got the psilocybin, the other half got niacin, just something placebo effect type thing. The people who got the psilocybin have stayed in the ministry because that experience that day was so profound that they say it has been the most spiritual experience they've had in their lives. So I didn't know where to place that, or to place Rabbi Jeffrey Cahn, who is using his Jewish faith to support his opening of a, what do you call it? Dispensary in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. And what has driven him is, as his place as a rabbi, going and seeing people in pain within the hospital's setting that he did as a rabbi. These I'm going to go through very quickly because many people have said many of these things already. But I believe there's some religious morality here where whites and African Americans smoke pot at about the same rate, and yet African Americans nationally are 4 times likely to be arrested on marijuana charge. Close to 90% of arrests are for simple possession, and lives are destroyed by this. If you want to read a good book, and I saw it there in the display, it's The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. She was at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly this past year and talks about how our drug war has really created a new Jim Crow. And I believe that this is an issue of social justice. There's also the economics that go into this. $51 billion spent. The highest incarceration rate in the world. Housing and employment is affected. It's hard to get a job. It's hard to get a house. It's hard to go to school once you have been incarcerated for this. Food stamps, students lose financial aid. And all of this, now that even though the majority of Americans now support the legalization. And I do believe in religious compassion. Cancer to me is a big thing. I've had cancer twice. When I was 13 years old, I had my left arm amputated because of cancer. I had colon cancer in 2005. Chemotherapy sucks. It's better today than it was when I was 13, but it still sucks. And when you're sick and when you're nauseous and you can't keep anything down, I would have liked to have had the possibility of trying something different than what I was given. And that I have seen people within my congregation and people I know who have been stricken by cancer and who have had the opportunity, though they had to get it illegally, but it was very helpful. It was very helpful to them. Loss of appetite, we see it with MS, muscle tension and pain, social anxieties and depression. These are compassionate issues to me that can may be alleviated with marijuana. So I'll just close with this quote. It says, "I do not consider myself a religious person in the usual sense, but there is a religious aspect to some highs. The heightened sensitivity in all areas gives me a feeling of communion with my surroundings, both animate and inanimate." That was Carl Sagan, who died in '96, a very famous astronomer, very famous physicist. You know, it doesn't matter to me if people smoke pot by saying, I smoke pot religiously, I smoke it every day. It doesn't matter to me if people smoke pot in order to transcend the everyday world, to commune with the divine, to meditate more easily, or just get another night's sleep. That doesn't matter to me. What does matter to me is that you and I have that choice to make. And what matters to me is that we treat people with compassion, that we treat people with justice, and that we treat people with their inherent worth and dignity. That's what's important to me, and that's how I find this to be religious, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I support Norml. Thanks.